John, I have just begun the recording and I will pass it off to you.
Great, thanks, Amanda. I sure appreciate it. And, thanks for everyone joining me today. I sure appreciate you joining this session, but let's go ahead and get started. I've got a lot of information to cover. And again, as Amanda had mentioned, throw things in the chat, open up your microphone if you have a question. I'm happy to redirect and go in different tangents as we explore VR and AR. I just want to do a quick introduction of me. And, I do work, as Amanda said, at Red Rocks Community College. I just want to provide my contact information there. And then, of course, for the folks in Colorado and beyond, if you're ever in the Lakewood area and you want to see any of the technology that we've set up here at Red Rocks, you're more than welcome to stop by, make an appointment, stop by. Happy to show you around if you are thinking about purchasing equipment yourself. Always happy to talk with a fellow colleague. So, as a good instructional designer, I do want to lay out our plan for the presentation this afternoon. So we do have a few things we're going to discuss, explore by the end of our presentation. And really one of the first things I want to learn about is what you're doing, either in the chat or within open up your microphone. I do want to identify some current VR and AR research trends. I want to have a brief journey of VR. We're not going to get too far down the road because we really just don't have enough time. And then what I really want to talk about is the equipment we set up here at Red Rocks Community College and how we're using it. And that's really going to be the most of the presentation. So let's get started. And again, I want to mention that the images that I'm using in here are either Creative Commons or I have cited them. So what I really want to know from the group is, and feel free to open up your microphones, throw it in the chat. How are you currently using VR in education? What are you using? Are you using it for fun? Are you using it for virtual field trips? Are you doing gaming, experience-based learning? What are your concerns with using VR, and what has been your successes? Anybody want to open up their microphone and let's talk? All right, so looks like Claire Bowen attempting to use VR and AR in plant science courses, creating reviews with videos and galleries. That's great. Claire, you want to open up your mic and follow up any on that? Don't all jump at once. All right, so we have a few more comments in here. Great. Trudy Brown says, not using it at all. I'm here to get ideas. Well, welcome, Trudy. I think we'll give you some good ideas about how to implement VR. Anybody else using VR? Oh, this is a great one.
Yes, I'm using it. I'm using it in my classes, but not for students and teaching, but for their work as a presentation and exhibit space.
Well, wonderful, Tammy. And what are you using? What's the topics? Is it just a variety of topics, or is it?
No, I teach in an international and European law department, so we use it in our most recent course in law and practice, which is a very practical approach course where they have to meet people in the field. So usually they just submit this and nobody ever sees it except the instructors. So by setting up an exhibition space, they actually got to see what their fellow classmates learned in their interviews, and then they could also show their own to classmates and kind of have a brief exchange.
That's cool. And that's really a great way to integrate it into your teaching and learning and into your curriculum. And actually, is that their final project that they're doing that for?
Yeah, it's their final one. And I think what really enriches it is that, of course, that also can stay there so they can go back and see it at different times. So it's great for a course like that where our students are all over the world during their internships, and they're taking the class synchronously, but it's a virtual online class. So then this is an opportunity for them to sort of get together if they can, but if they can't, they can always go back in the space later on.
That's great. And is that a completely asynchronous, or is that remote in terms of real-time remote that you're doing that?
It's remote because we do the lectures themselves that they had during the course were done online, but it was synchronous. And then the space that we made for the exhibits was also a day when they could come and all come at the same time and go into the space with their avatars. However, because it's like is a virtual world, then it can stay there, and students who weren't able to make it can go back in there or come in later or whatever.
That's
And
wonderful,
it was
Tammy.
in Mozilla Hubs.
That's
So
cool. And yeah, I'm
yeah.
sorry, Tammy. I was going to say Monica Marlowe said she's using Mozilla Hubs as well.
Oh God.
Well, great, Tammy. Well, thanks for sharing. Well, Tom says we are creating some 360 video simulations for nursing. That's great. And museum design course is being designed to explore how XR technology can be used to incorporate into exhibits. Amber says, not currently on a project, have used VR for teacher class management. Tom also says we have GIS courses using VR tools for modeling. And Tom, we're using Google Earth here at Red Rocks Community College with some of our GIS GEO courses. Michael says looking to expand our VR equipment at the CU Dental School. Wonderful, Michael. And I know you guys do a lot of neat things at the CU Dental School. You have backpacks, you have Vives there at the CU Dental program. Ben says, no, Mike, sorry, but we have a virtual VR for a virtual field trip to Colorado State Capitol building. That's great. That's a great use. And then, yeah, Monica says, and I agree, a lot of us are exploring hubs as well. Amber adds in concerns these tools still lack credibility with some, and they are tough to scale hardware. Yeah, I can't agree with that more. And really with, you know, with the high-end headsets, it's really a one-to-one when you're using them. I do know that a lot of companies are coming out these days where you can log into a mainframe to experience the software. And so you just need some equipment at home to be able to do it. But it is a nice way to upscale some of that technology. Well, great. We had some wonderful examples in the chat. I appreciate you letting me know what you're doing. But really what it gets down to for what a lot of other folks are doing is they're doing these, virtual field trips, gaming, training, experience-based learning. And another, big one is to really increase your student engagement in the course materials. I think that's, the VR technology is cool. It's interesting, and so it does increase engagement. Let's move on to the next slide. So what I really wanted to talk about, and I'm going to go over this brief. I don't want to go down a rabbit hole because there are a lot of articles. I just grabbed a few that I found, literature reviews. I do want to point out a few things with these literature reviews, and here's kind of an infographic that I found. I've cited it down here, which is also in the presentation. I'm sure I'll make this presentation available at ELCC, but really some of the things that we're thinking about already is poor user experience, hardware. I know I've experienced that with implementing VR and AR here at Red Rocks. We have a lot of issues with software updates, compatibility. We bought some headsets 2 years ago, some Vive headsets, and they are already deprecated. They don't even support them anymore whatsoever. And so we're moving quickly through this whole process of, rapid prototyping and implementation to the technology. Also, I don't know if anybody's experienced this before, is that lack of quality content. Really most of us are using off-the-shelf technology. And with that, it's we're kind of using what technology's out there. We're going to either Steam or the Oculus store, and we're looking to see what's available out there. And sometimes what's available within the field, it's very low quality, and it maybe just really doesn't meet our needs for instruction. if we take a look at the across, and again, I think this is a pretty representative graph of really how VR is using, and most of you here, if you're gaming right now, you may have a headset with your, your different, gaming, but gaming's a really big one. And then also healthcare. We're going to get down into some of what we're using for medical, or we have a health sciences campus here. We have a physician assistant program that likes to use our VR. And then of course, education. And then really as we go down, manufacturing, I don't know about you, but I'm not a big fan of, the 3D films anymore. It's just not something that I really want to use. Let's take a look at a few articles. The first one I wanted to grab, military missing from industries. I think, Goran, hopefully I have that pronounced correctly. I actually didn't see that in there. That's a really good point. So literature review, really, where are we at? I wanted to grab a few literature reviews in terms of overall, processes, where we're at. Wanted to make sure they were current. So let's just take a look at this one. This was an analysis from 2019. And really from what they found, very high level review of this research. Yeah, VR is promising. I think we can all agree on that. And really what they're saying is that, if you do decide to adopt a VR technology, AR, VR, really careful assessment and identifying how that technology will support mastery of the objectives that you've outlined for whatever you're trying to use it for. Data collection, and that's something here. I'll be interested as we get through this presentation to see how folks are doing more and more data collection, how they're assessing VR in terms of learning outcomes. But again, that's one of the recommendations for the research. And then finally, research in VR, really looking about how it applies cross-discipline. And I have to agree on that. Really in that infographic that we looked at earlier, medical is interesting, and then a few other areas, but how does it apply? We have some of our English faculty here using VR, psychology, but again, we'll talk a little bit more about that as we get into the presentation. And really as a holistic instructional process, I agree to that. As a lot of the times we buy this technology and then we say, well, what do we do with it now? Is it really a gimmick? Is it something that we just roll in every so often and students say, oh yeah, that's kind of nice, but really how does it impact our learning outcomes and in student success within the class? This was another interesting one, and I grabbed this one because of the focus on remote learning and engagement. There's a lot of discussion these days with the pivot to online and how we're approaching teaching and learning in a remote environment, because remote's not going to go away. I think it's just critical that we take a look at how VR can impact remote learning. And so within here, we're going to take a look at some of the table data. I grabbed the article. I just want to look at some of their observations that they found, but really for just to frame this conversation, within this literature review, they define performance as observed or no change to either efficiency or accomplishing assignments, cumulative grade, did it increase, or specific metrics, whether it's formative or summative, for student ability to accomplish that defined task. And again, all research in this article was limited to remote learning. And so really, I'm going to grab this here. I'm just going to drag this in. Can everybody see this? And let me increase the size. Everybody just throw in the chat. Let me know, say, if you can see this article. I just want to make sure everybody sees it. Perfect, Monica. So again, really what they're doing within here is identifying several different research articles and whether or not the performance increased or decreased. But I think probably some of the most interesting things that I see in here in terms of the breakdown, I do like where this is going and in terms of the research of the article. So course design, content, and planning. So use of AR technologies with insufficient training. And I think we can all agree with this is that, if we're throwing the technology at the students or the instructor, obviously their performance is going to decrease on those tasks. And really that makes sense. We really need more training to integrate this technology. Oftentimes, again, I can't stress this enough, we grab this technology, we throw it in the classroom with little or no supervision or support, and that really does not lead to effective performance outcomes for those students. And so you can see as we go through here, again, these are each of the research studies that they took a look at. And, when they did use AR and they used it effectively, what they found within this research study is that engagement increased, performance increased. And so as we go down through these different articles, you can kind of see where this is going. Again, several different outcomes in here really interest me. Also, probably one of the most, if you take a look at all this and you're kind of weeding through this data, what I like to see is that, performance increases, engagement increases, especially if you take a look at this information in terms of its complex tasks, or if it's something in terms of visual spatial, and it's very complex, VR actually helps with engagement, performance, and that is something that I'm very interested in terms of those difficult to understand complex tasks. All right, let's go ahead and get back into the presentation. But I have this link in the presentation, and of course, I'll drop it into the chat if we have time at the end. But you'll have access to this article. It is in the Open Journal articles that I had found. So let's review a little bit of history with VR. So I do know we have a few folks in here, and I have a little pop quiz at the end for everyone. So let me ask you this. What do you often think of VR? Cutting edge technology, current, and put it in the chat for me. What is your first response when you think of virtual reality and augmented reality? Put a word in the chat for me. What's the immediate thing that comes to mind to you when you hear augmented reality, headaches, primitive, what else? PSTD, eye pain, motion sickness, eye strain, love it. Oculus Quest presence. Not for everyone, you bet. Unity. Thanks, Robin. What else? Anybody else want to throw, out there? So really, I added this slide in here, very cutting edge image. But to tell you the truth, really, VR has been around in certain forms for quite a while now. This is a stereoscope. Has anybody heard of a stereoscope before? But really what we're taking a look at is two of the same images, one for each eye. And this is at least 100 years old. So it's been around for a while. Really, with this technology, very, very old technology, you have left eye, right eye views. You put your head in here. It actually creates a single three-dimensional image using static images. So, this technology has been around in different forms for quite a while. And so I would argue for some of the older folks in here, like me, 40-somethings and older, that the Mattel ViewMaster was really arguably the original VR technology out there in terms of that stereoscopic view. And VR really has been around for a while. This is an image from NASA, what they were using during the early 1990s, which, is a really long time ago now, quite a few years ago. Same thing, this one looks like this might actually hurt my head. Within the chat, I saw, you know, somebody said rehab. Oh my gosh, you know, really motion sickness. This would actually looks like it would hurt my head. But again, this is a 1990s VR headset. Obviously, we've gotten much, much better with our head-mounted displays these days. And finally, you know, really when we're talking about augmented reality, virtual reality, you know, is this the future? Is holograms the future? In terms of, I don't need a headset. It doesn't cause motion sickness, eye strain. Holograms are really, if you start looking at the technology and researching it, there's quite a few companies out there that are actively working on this technology. So here's my pop quiz. So virtual reality headsets, let's see how much you know. Virtual reality headsets use what display to give three-dimensional depth to what you are seeing? And I already gave some hints. So put it in the chat if you wouldn't mind. You could just put A, B, C, or D. What do you think it is? So, oh gosh, so Goran says B, Amber B, Samantha B, Claire B. We have a lot of Bs. I think we have a winner. It is B. Really what that does is this. I'm just going to give you a quick example. I'm not going to play this for very long, but what you're seeing, and this really goes back to that stereoscope, is that what we're looking at is each eye is looking at a specific image, slightly offset. And so what we see, I'm just going to jump ahead on this. Here it's telling us directions and with our Google Cardboard. But you know, if anybody's feeling motion sick, look away. But again, this is a stereoscopic view that I see within many, many different devices that are currently out there, including the Vive and Oculus. Again, what that creates for your user is really an immersive and believable experience. You know, of course, that's dependent on the resolution. That's a key thing. That display is split. That creates that stereoscopic 3D effect and really that depth that we see within immersive VR. So let's move on. We did some pop quizzes. We did a little bit of discussion. Let's examine some of what we've implemented at Red Rocks. And you may be looking at this and saying, John, this is some of the same stuff we've done, and I'd love to talk to you as well. So really, you know, here in around what, 2016, 2017, somewhere around there, Red Rocks really started out carefully. We started out with low budget head-mounted displays, and many of you who recognize this already know that that's the Google Cardboard. But these are low budget. You put your phone in them, and then there is, if you go to your Play Store or your Apple Store and you type in 3D or VR in your Play Store, you're going to find hundreds and hundreds of VR applications, including 360 videos that you can utilize within these headsets. And these are very cheap. You know, some of them you can get it for a couple of bucks. But really, it enables everyone to experience VR to some certain level. They're very inexpensive. It uses the student's technology or your learner's technology, which is a phone. And some of them even allow for that focal and pupil adjustment, and which does help a little bit with eye strain if you get it just right in terms of making sure that that VR, you know, that low cost head-mounted display is just right for your eyes. You know, I'm just going to go through, you know, these are a few of the ones that we bought. You know, you can find these on Amazon these days, you know, for like 10 bucks. I think the difficulty with these headsets is that finding the newer headsets that fit the really large phones that we have these days. And, you know, here's a good example. You know, we have this one. We still use these off and on in the classroom. You know, if we do a display or we do work with a faculty instructor, we'll bring a few of these headsets for students to play around with when choosing topics. You know, some of these headsets even have remote controls where you can control your phone. Very nice. Again, here is our Google Cardboard, and many of you have already received some of these. Maybe you got it in the mail as a gimmick from a business, but again, a cheap way to do it. It actually used a magnet here on the side to move things forward. But then here again, here's our stereoscopic display. each eye receives that same image. So Samsung, really, the Samsung Gear is something we also played around with here at Red Rocks. This was something that we utilized. We had several of these headsets. They really worked well. Cost around $47. Actually had a touchpad on the side of your head that you could navigate your phone. But the interesting thing that I really wanted to focus in is that this has been discontinued. They don't even sell these anymore. Really, we're going at a quick pace. And these, cheap head-mounted displays, I start to go into Amazon and I see less and less of them in terms of new development. So let's take a look at some of the high-end stuff. Again, we still have a lot of those low-end HMDs, but we've also invested into some high-end ones as well. So our first prototype, really, this was right around 2017, 2018, is we have an idea lab that's housed by our students here at Red Rocks Community College. And we asked them to build us a VR-ready desktop computer so we could utilize the Oculus Rift. We had an AV cart with that, and then to move it around. And I will say that this cart, once you see my picture coming up, it is bulky. It was so difficult to transport. I was actually transporting it to our other Arvada campus, and it was in my car, and I had to slam on my brakes, and everything flew forward in my car in the back, and basically broke the casing on the computer. And then another time we had somebody here at Red Rocks helping move that desktop computer to our campus, and dropped it on the pavement and then shattered the glass in it. And so this desktop computer was abused significantly, and boy, was it hard to move around. But this is what it looks like. And feel free to mentally laugh, or you could put an emoji within the chat. You'll notice that we have these little light poles here. These were the sensors. Most of the sensors are in the headset now. And so this bulky headset, bulky, there's our Rift there. Bulky headset, also bulky computer, and this AV card. I actually just set this up recently to take a picture of it, but this is really what we used for several years. We'd roll this into the classroom, and it was a one-on-one encounter with it. We would bring in those low-cost head-mounted displays so we can kind of break up the classroom into groups, but this is what we use. And so this is kind of what it looked like. The Idea Lab, of course, they had to add in the really, the lights and the strobes. That's fun. Definitely got to add that. Got to add some flair. There's our Rift. It's well used. You can see the scratches on it. And then that's just a picture. We actually mounted the sensors to tripods to make it easier to set up within the classroom. And really the breakdown of that, this is that, and it's still a respectable computer right now, and we still use it for setups, but this was the configuration. Again, this was built by our college, our students, and we can't thank them enough for it. But it was around $800 back in 2018. And if you know the prices for video cards and processors now, gosh, this computer probably would be closer to $2,000 now easily. The one thing that we did found very useful, we have a AVER board. So this is a gigantic board. So really to create that immersive experience, we not only rolled that cart in, and again, we still use this board for demos for students. We'll just roll it right out into our hallway. And we want students to see what's going on. So we utilize this AVER board, it's several years old now, but it's on a roller. And so we can just roll it out into the hallway. We could connect our laptops that we have, the desktop, whatever it is. And then so students can watch. It's a very social aspect. We do fun things, like in the past with this, we do like a Beat Saber tournament here at Red Rocks Community College, and we'll roll this out to those students. Fun to watch, that's for sure. And then this is, being 86 inches, it's huge. So this is our Oculus Rift, again, circa 2018. And really the cost was pretty expensive, $600 at the time. These are the minimum requirements. But this was, in terms of development, if you follow this along, it was going since right around 2010 and earlier. Some of the many models were coming out, but this Oculus Rift was one of the first headsets that actually had, really good low latency, which helped with that motion sickness within VR, high resolution, high refresh rate. And this is just when they came out. Let's skip through that fairly quickly, but that's kind of their statement when they came out, and really it was groundbreaking in terms of what Oculus did. That's going to skip this. That's just a video that they had. So let's go into some of more current technology and what we've set up here at Red Rocks Community College. So we have created VR mobile labs, and what they look like is this. So we have a HP ZBook 17-inch G5 as part of that process. We also have a backpack that actually goes on your back. And then we utilized HTC Vive Pro and then Reverb. And we're using a laptop briefcase on wheels. So let's take a look at what those look like. So this is our what we carry our mobile lab around with. It's very lightweight. This actually fits the laptop. This fits the headset. This holds our wipes, to clean off the headset. Everything that we need fits within this case. And you can kind of see we've got a lot of room in there for those VR. That's really what it looks like. This is our complete setup to use VR now, which is a lot less, very, very mobile. There's our different headsets that we utilize. We use either or depending on the situation. But again, a very lightweight mobile, usage. Here's our backpack that we also utilize. And so this backpack is nice as well. We have batteries on it. So the batteries actually fit on this little backpack here. And then this is the computer right here that goes on it. And so extremely mobile, very lightweight, in terms of, a computer being on your back. We find this very helpful, especially if the student wants to walk around. We can have an open classroom with, of course, removing all the chairs out of the way. When we set up our guides for that VR, we can have a really, really large area where that student can explore that technology, that software. Again, VR backpack, great technology. And if you're wondering, what that costs, because I'm always wondering about what things cost, that the backpack was around $3,700. One of the things that we notice is that the battery packs, we definitely have multiple battery packs because while the student is using it, the batteries are being used. We have some on standby as well, but again, very mobile. So something that we've also implemented here at Red Rocks, I'm going to move away from VR, and we're going to talk about AR. So we're also utilizing augmented reality. And what I've noticed in the chat, a few folks said motion sickness, gosh, it makes me sick. So we wanted to make sure we had other technology to accommodate more students. Not all learners, you notice I didn't say all learners, but most students. So we're using Z-Space, which is augmented reality. And I'll show you what that looks like here. So, per unit, it's around $4,000. It's a 24-inch display. It does have some pretty decent graphics, Intel i7, but it comes with a stylus. And what it looks like is this. And so this is some pictures that I took of our Z-Space. This is one of the diagrams or the body diagrams that our nursing department is currently using AR for. This is the entire setup. You have these 3D glasses here. Again, you'll notice that it's not immersive VR. You're still using, glasses like this, which reduce significantly the eye strain and that motion sickness. Again, there's a certain percentage of the population that absolutely can't use virtual reality. It makes them sick. This is another alternative in terms of VR. You have this pen where you can pull things out. You have a keyboard, and And you'll notice these little dots here. These are for, it actually will track you. So you put those glasses on, and as you move around, that image will be tracked. And just a little close-up of those sensors here. And this is what the students can wear in the classroom as well. Again, with zSpace, typically the instructor would wear these, and the students would wear these glasses to get that virtual reality environment and that feel of the actual, muscle structure coming out of them, and then being able to pull it apart. There's just a close-up of the pen that you can use that allows you to move things around. It's very similar to a mouse. What I want to show you is just a quick 30-second clip. This will give you a much better idea than me talking about it. So let's see what AR can do. So I didn't want to play too much of that, but I think you get the idea again. And it truly, if you use that zSpace, it pulls it out in front of you. So it's just right in front of your face. Neat technology. And again, really reduces the eye strain and blurriness. And if you are not used to using VR, or if it makes you sick, motion sickness, this is a great alternative. So those are really some of the technologies that we've implemented here at Red Rocks, but probably one of the things that folks have really talked about is, really during the pivot to online, is the difficulty with using this technology. And so we've really had to increase our cleaning of the equipment. And then also we have these little eye patches here that go over the headset. But of course, we will clean it after each usage with screen cleaning wipes and wipe down the equipment during the pivot to online. So really, let's talk about some applications with VR and how are we applying it at Red Rocks in the classroom. So these are the departments that we are currently using VR, AR technology. We have our fire science program, our physician assistant, nursing, psychology, biology, one of our CAD courses, which is SketchUp, geography, English. They're really using it at a variety of different levels and immersion. But what I want to do is focus in on a couple of examples. I think this is probably one of the coolest examples that we are using right now in terms of our CTE usage. And really focusing in our Red Rocks fire science technology program. So the person in charge of that is Commander John Paget. We recommended this technology to Professor Paget, and he's implemented this in his curriculum. He actually has a room devoted to this technology now. It's called Flame VR. They're using a Vive, but you wear a suit. So you actually put a suit on, and that suit heats up. And so it actually gets really warm. I've tried this technology and I'm like, man, I'm getting hot. And also the nozzle that they use for spraying the fire within the VR program actually provides haptic feedback. And so, if you're doing it wrong, it's going to be shaking. It's a really great example of experience-based learning. It's putting that learner into a situation that is dangerous, but it's not, because it's a virtual environment. And of course, it's cool. It really increases our student engagement in the course materials. Let me just play a quick clip of this and I'll show you what it looks like.
All firefighters face the challenge of feeling prepared, confident, and ready to fight the next fire. It is difficult for training organisations to safely recreate the conditions of a real fire for training firefighters. There's now a new, safe way to prepare firefighters for the fireground. Flame Trainer, a world-first firefighter simulator that uses virtual reality and haptic technology. Flame Trainer immerses firefighters in a real fire scenario where they can feel heat and hose force, along with realistic sound and vision. You can set up Flame Trainer in around 10 minutes. It comes in 2 suitcases.
And I will say, I mentioned before, I tried that technology, and if you're spraying the hose wrong, the fire will actually increase. And so it's really, it adapts to what you're doing, and in terms of what you're doing right, what you're doing wrong. If you're spraying it right with the hose, the fire will go out. But if you're not, the fire increases and actually gets closer to you within the VR. Really, really cool application for virtual reality. Red Rock's Physician Assistant Program. We have a Master's of Physician Assistant program here at Red Rocks Community College. Really what they're using this technology for is anatomy and physiology. They want the students, after they talk about it during their class, or maybe they're working in the cadaver lab, they want the students to experience and to see what the organs look like, be able to rotate that around. Again, this is training for those students, and it increases engagement in their course materials. Let's just watch a quick clip of this. Again, I think this is probably one of the best programs, and the students truly like seeing this when we come by their classroom. And so that gives you a good idea really of what that program does. It does a few things. One is that the student can actually enter into the heart or to the organ. And also you can change the criteria on it. If you're wondering what a liver looks like with cirrhosis, you can actually increase the level of cirrhosis. Or if you're looking at the lungs and the alveoli within there, if you have chronic lung disease, you can actually add that in and see the impact to the breathing. And so that application is probably, again, one of our favorite applications that the PA program here uses. Again, they'll, within the curriculum, they'll study about it, they'll be in the classroom, and then they can actually experience what it's like to be in that organ, or to see the impact of different types of scenarios, whether it's sickness or health-related issues. ShareCare VR is a great program, and I would, again, highly recommend it. Let's see, how am I doing on time? So looks like about 6 more minutes left. I'm going to skip through this one. One of the other things that we're using extensively here at Red Rocks is 360 cameras. And I saw that at the beginning, a few folks had indicated they're using some 360 videos. We're using a few of them here at Red Rocks. One is our marketing department is looking to do a virtual tour for students, a 360 tour. And so they're currently using both our Rilo camera and their GoPro. Another application that's really cool here at Red Rocks, and again, this goes back into, going into an unsafe environment and why that immersive VR works so well, is, one of our departments is actually taking a look at, the coal and gas industry. Really, one of the things that they want to do is they want to show a trench, and then in terms of the soil layers within there. So they went down into that trench and then did a 360 recording of that trench to show the different layers of dirt, the strategization in there, and identifying risk factors related to a cave-in. Again, a very dangerous situation, but if you put the VR goggles on, it makes it much safer. And so again, that's just another application. Of course, YouTube, if you haven't checked already, YouTube has a dedicated 360 channel, which is just amazing. There's hundreds and thousands of videos on there that are in 360 for teaching and learning. Great way. Of course, virtual field trips, that was mentioned before. 360 videos are just cool. You can even use one of those low-end head-mounted displays that we had talked about earlier, the Google Cardboard. You could drag them in the classroom. Students can use their phones. Very, very cost-effective way to implement VR in the classroom. So really, what I'd like to is just within the last, 4 minutes that we have, I'm going to stop right here. But really, we've talked about quite a few things, Red Rocks is doing. I'd really like to hear from you, now that you kind of had an idea, maybe you're new to this, maybe you're using something cool that you'd like to add to the presentation. Feel free to open up your microphone. And looks like we have a question here. Just want to make sure, is anyone here have experience designing instructions to develop psychomotor skills using VR, AR? So I'm just going to put that question out there, and I don't know if anybody does, but what else? What other folks doing? What are you really proud of? Have you thought about implementing these tools that I talked about? Anything look interesting to you? Feel free to throw it in the chat. Open up your microphone. Let's talk for the last few minutes. Does anybody have any questions? All right, Michael, go ahead. Feel free to open up your microphone, Michael.
Yeah, John, thanks for the great presentation. One of the things I wanted to ask you, and maybe your nursing faculty might have given you a little bit of insight on that. I just feel like I didn't realize that there was a thing called the Z space. We do have a lot of the headsets for VR. And I'm just wondering, do you feel like there was a value added to the immersive VR headsets and like those type of things where you want to look specifically into, the body or the anatomy of whatever, for whatever reason? Do you feel like the Z space was kind of more, I would sense that there's less barrier to entry with putting on those glasses, or do you feel like they both had enough positives and negatives where you could go either way in the medical fields?
Well, and honestly, that's a great question, Michael. And one of the reasons why we wanted to implement, that AR here at Red Rocks was, we can connect that AR device to the projector. And so students can put the glasses on and then actually see, not only the screen, but you could just diagram it and use it as a flat image as well. So really has a multiple uses. So one, that Z space can be used as a flat image, and then you can, as an instructor, you could pull apart the body. I know that that's kind of gross to think about, but that's just the reality of things. But you could use it as a teaching and learning within the classroom as part of your lecture, just as a static flat image. But also it could be immersive, where the class could put on the headsets. You could even have, some schools have labs of these Z spaces where you can go in to the lab, everybody puts the glasses on, and then you have a lecture within the lab. I think the key point to me, Michael, was just, that certain percentage of the population is unable to use VR. It makes them sick. Other things that you really think about with immersive VR is, individuals who, they're very sensitive to light, or they may have had epilepsy in the past. I'm actually really, really careful with certain physical conditions, seizures, things like that. I'm very aware of that with using VR, and I always make that announcement before somebody's using it. Hey, have you considered this? Have you thought about this? If you have had seizures in the past or certain medical conditions, you need to be aware of using this VR. With AR, we don't see that nearly as much because, again, it's not that immersive VR where you put the headset on, but we really honestly use a combination of both, Michael. The immersive VR, the backpacks, and then the AR as well.
Thank you.
Oh, great. And then so somebody says working on currently I'm working on a research project. I don't know if you, somebody, I guess we probably have to end on that comment because Amanda's going to kick us out here in a minute. I'd love to hear within 1 minute. Do we have a minute, Amanda?
You can take a minute.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, if you guys hear me, that's Hema. So from Syracuse University, I'm a first-year PhD scholar. So presently, I'm working on a research project, which is in a very initial stage of designing instruction, especially to instructions for psychomotor skills. So let's say, for example, if you want to design instructions exclusively to teach how to perform a push-up exercise exactly. So, I mean, we can go into details later, but that's the gist. And then it's quite challenging, but we are still thinking through on which could be the most appropriate device that could be used. We have few thoughts in mind, but we have yet to decide which tool to use. Yeah.
Well, and I think we're out of time, but if you feel comfortable, put your email in the chat for everybody to see if you're comfortable and you want them to reach out if they've had experiences or recommendations on that. Of course, you're always happy to email me as well. You know, my information will be out there, but I think we're 2 after now, so we have to end. So the next person, they're pretty serious on those stop
Thank
times.
you so much.
But thanks for everybody for joining me today. You know, feel free to reach out. I'd love to hear what you're doing, or if you're doing it better, I'd love to know. Thanks again.